tariffs on a couple $100 billion. He has not been satisfied with the talks with China on this. My guess is announcements will be coming soon. Again, I don't want to front run him on that. I think the basic stories are probably more or less correct. Straight out of our meetings, one of the things I've learned, it's quite remarkable, is you have a high-level meeting, all the phones have to leave the room, right? But you may as well have a direct mic into the Wall Street Journal. Stuff gets out. So again, I don't want to be specific on that. The president has talked about it, and announcements will be coming soon.
We have not seen a massive reaction in the stock market to this.
Yes.
Some people have been surprised by that. Have you?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think in its wisdom, the stock market sees, first of all, the big story here is the change in policies that I mentioned before and the economic boom which is emerging. I think that's really the big story. I mean, stocks are close to an all-time high. Profits are close to an all-time high, along with the other data points that I mentioned. The tariff story may be a very good force for good. Don't rule that out. It's, like I said, people want to blame President Trump for fixing a broken system, and I think that's unfair. So the stock market, which may be discounting, I don't know how far in advance, maybe it's saying, you know what, some of these reforms are necessary. And they're being done cautiously. There's lots of discussions inside the government and with private sector people. I understand there are disagreements, as is always the case when you undertake big reforms. But I don't see any reason to think at the present time that the president's trade reforms are going to damage the economy. In fact, I think the president's trade reforms will help the economy. And just one recent example is Mexico.
Sure.
That's a good thing. And my hope is we'll get more progress with Canada, the European Union, Japan, and perhaps China. I don't want to rule out China. I'm just saying that we still await serious talks. That's all. So I think that's why the stock market continues to do very well. These may be positive developments long term.
Well, we talked to a lot of people, obviously, on CNBC, and most of them, when asked why they don't think the stock market's been impacted, say they think that this is a negotiating tactic, that this will eventually be resolved, that they don't anticipate seeing the full additional 200 billion tariffs come on, or even the 267 billion after that, that they would weigh things differently if they thought that was a real threat. What do you say to that?
Well, I don't want to get ahead of the president, and I don't want to get into a lot of details about this. But it is a grand strategy of negotiating. It is President Trump's brand and style. He's tough. Mm-hmm. He's laid out his goals. I think they're very sensible. As I say, it is a free trade strategy, but it's hard to make the reforms. So whether they're long-term or not, I think they're necessary. And we'll see. We'll see how this plays out. I remember years ago when I worked for President Reagan when I was a child. I go to the White House once every 35 years or so. I remember Mrs. Reagan correctly developing an anti-drug strategy by saying, just say no. Remember? She was right. I would say to the Chinese, on something of substance, just say yes. It takes two to tango. We've put out our asks. We're open to talks, as I said, at any time. So just say yes to a couple things, and then let's move on. This can be done. Trade's tough, I get that. Everything's tough. Tax cuts are tough. Rolling back regulations is tough. The president's whole agenda is tough. He's keeping promises. The reason I a little belabored the Economic Club in New York 2 years ago, he laid out a platform, and he's making good on it.